You ever watch the news during a big protest and just get the feeling you're not getting the whole story? Well, we're about to dive into a viral video commentary that makes a pretty startling claim that the Minneapolis riots weren't some spontaneous cry for justice, but actually a carefully manufactured crisis. So let's break down their argument and see exactly how they build this case.
So right out of the gate, the video lays its cards on the table. The core idea is that this whole situation isn't what it looks like on the surface. Instead, it's an orchestrated distraction. That's a huge claim, right? So you gotta ask, what's the evidence they're pointing to? Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, so the argument kicks off by zeroing in on public statements made by Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, specifically how he described an incident that happened with a federal agent during all the unrest.
The commentary really focuses on this specific quote. The video presents this comparison, an injury from a vehicle versus closing a fridge door, as a deliberate move by the mayor to make what happened sound like no big deal. And according to the video, this wasn't just some awkward metaphor. No, it was a message.
And the source really doesn't pull any punches here, calling the mayor's statement gaslighting at its finest. They're arguing this isn't just political spin, but a calculated move to make you, the public, question what you're actually seeing with your own two eyes.
And that, of course, leads to the big question the video poses. Why would a mayor do that? Why would you downplay violence against a federal agent? The idea here is that this wasn't just a slip of the tongue, it was a calculated political play.
So what's the motive they're pointing to? Well, according to the video, it's all politics. The claim is that the mayor is pandering to a key voter base to hold on to power and, maybe more importantly, to create a huge distraction from this massive corruption scandal that was supposedly bubbling up.
Okay, so after looking at the politicians, the video pivots. It shifts focus to the actual people on the streets. It starts pulling apart these interview clips, really questioning if the protesters are who they say they are and why they're really there.
The video uses clips just like this one as a prime example. I mean, ethnic cleansing. That's an incredibly heavy term, right? And the source's argument is that using a word like that here is so disconnected from the facts on the ground that it just tanks the credibility of the person saying it.
And here's another one they use to hammer this point home. This statement from a protester is framed as proof of what the video calls these really extreme, open border ideas. The takeaway, according to the source, is that these protesters are, and I'm quoting here, out of touch with reality.
But this next one, this is what the video presents as the real kicker. This moment is framed as the smoking gun, definitive proof of what the source calls a paid protest industrial complex. It's positioned as a straight-up admission that this person isn't just some passionate activist, but someone who's literally on the clock.
So what's the whole point of all this chaos? Well, the video claims it's all just a giant smokescreen, a distraction cooked up to hide a huge financial crime that some very powerful people really don't want you to know about. And we're not talking about some petty cash here. The claim is that the fraud is in the billions, with taxpayer funds just vanishing from federal programs in Minnesota. That's a staggering number, and it's used to drive home just how high the stakes were and why you'd need such a massive, chaotic distraction. The video doesn't just hint at things either. It flat out names some big-time Minnesota politicians, accusing them of being part of the fraud. And then it points to what it calls really suspicious timing. That the riots just happened to explode right when federal investigators were starting to close in.
So then the video kind of zooms out to put it all together. It argues that this whole thing isn't a one-time event. No, it's a playbook, a repeatable political strategy for using a crisis to hide corruption.
And here's the playbook, laid out step by step. First, a huge scandal is about to break, so politicians need a distraction. They find a controversial event and pour gasoline on it. Then, paid protesters, their words, show up and create chaos. The media, of course, focuses on the riots. And just like that, the original fraud investigation gets buried. It's a pretty wild theory when you see it all laid out like that.
And the video wraps all this up with one final, powerful idea, calling the whole thing a protection racket. The argument is that regular citizens, the taxpayers, are stuck paying for everything. They're paying for the fraud itself with their tax dollars, and then they're paying for the destructive riots that were designed to cover it all up.
So, where does that leave us? The commentary we just walked through lays out a very compelling and, let's be honest, a very controversial theory. But it definitely makes you ask a pretty fundamental question. When we see this kind of unrest on the news, are we seeing a real, spontaneous cry for justice? Or could we be watching a piece of political theater designed to make us look the other way? The source we looked at today would say the answer, well, it's a lot more complicated than you might think.